you're no longer looking at how do I help everyone? And instead you start asking what creates the biggest ripple and you focus on that, right? And that's where scaling and leadership really begin.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jo Ring, your host and founder of Appointify AI. On this podcast, we talk to wellness founders and leaders who are scaling their businesses using smart strategy and tech. At Appointify AI, we use specialized AI agents to help wellness businesses delegate the boring, the repetitive, the time-consuming tasks like lead gen, scheduling, and content creation, freeing you up to focus on delivering a highly personalized service and scaling your business to the level that you want. Now, today I have a fantastic guest who's living proof of the strategic pivot that we're going to discuss. She's a holistic founder coach specialized in helping established practitioners and healers step into their CEO role. She's a founder of Boss Frequency, and she's here to talk about the mindset, operational, and branding shifts required to scale a high-touch service business. Please welcome Alyssa Knapp.
Thank you so much for having me.
Just to start, could you walk us through your journey, specifically what led you from working in corporate wellness to begin with and then running your own integrative wellness practice to now coaching founders on scaling their own businesses?
Yeah, so I started, like you mentioned, in corporate wellness. So there was that time when I was just really focused on helping people live the happiest, healthiest lives. During that time, I was an exercise physiologist and a clinical health coach and working in corporate in worksite wellness where the priority was really helping employees of organizations live healthier because what we find is that obviously healthier means more productivity, means a happier workplace, happier employees, the company does well, right? All of these things, we know that it starts with well-being. A big theme that I saw in corporate coaching was that stress seemed to be the most underlying contributor to all of the other issues that any employee was experiencing. So if they were working on weight loss or smoking cessation or blood pressure, diabetes, like any of the things that we were paid to coach them on, stress and mindset and all of that really came to be the most important factor that I would coach people through and on. So what happened was the company I was working for actually went bankrupt. So I lost that position and it was actually such divine timing. The universe just opened up this opportunity for me to step into launching my business because I was kind of at this crossroads. I was like, okay, do I want to stay in corporate wellness? Do I want to move into, launching my own business, which I had always dabbled in entrepreneurship really my whole life. So I understood by going into business for myself, it wasn't just going to be me coaching people, which is what I love to do, but it was also going to mean me learning business and marketing and putting myself out there. And that excited me because I love all of those things. So I also love that I got to, would get to be more creative and, call the shots instead of somebody else calling the shots all the time, which I always hated in corporate. I hated that I had this like glass ceiling. So I launched my business. And when I did, it was a little bit of coaching, a little bit of Reiki energy healing, a little bit of exercise physiology. So there were a lot of different elements that I had leaned into. And gosh, I just learned so much in those early years of my business of trying to speak to all of the people, trying to sell all of the different types of one-on-one things I could do with them, all the transformations I could bring them through. So I really went through a journey of figuring out like, why am I here? What is really lighting me up and how can I really serve? And while all of this was happening, it was, COVID was happening. So during that time, I transitioned from an in-person business to fully online. So it was at that point that I started doing more like online classes, building more courses. I was a Reiki master teacher. I still am a Reiki master teacher. In, doing that, I was taking my courses. Okay, how can I do this more efficiently? How can I reach more people? So all of that was happening. And what I noticed started to happen too was people started to come to me more for business advice as practitioners and healers, seeing what I was doing and what I was naturally good at, which is organizing, planning, strategizing, compartmentalizing in a good way, the different things that actually have to happen as a business owner while holding this vision for what's, bigger, right? What's the bigger picture? What's the next step? So in doing that, I got my business coaching certification through an organization called She Heals the World. And I also worked as an associate coach for them as well. So I got to lead like some of their masterminds, did some business coaching for them. So that really helped me build confidence too in getting out there and launching my business as a business coach. So it was a big identity shift that I had to go through. Honestly, within each of these different stages, first from going from the scientist, evidence based person to the more woo energy
Yeah.
type of a thing, to like really stepping into my purpose and even talking about. And then from there, shifting into the role of selling less one on one, more passive. And then from practitioner to business coach. And that was a really big thing that I think subconsciously I kind of held myself back a little bit longer than maybe I should have. But I only just recently launched my new brand, which is Boss Frequency, and that was previously Integrative Wellness Journeys. And even though the work I was doing had shifted and changed, very much from not speaking to people who would maybe utilize healing services, speaking more to entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, practitioners, right? In what I was offering and my content. It wasn't until just this couple months ago that I made that full switch from a branding perspective, which has already blown everything I'm doing out of the water in the best possible way because now my brand actually reflects my identity.
Fantastic. Yeah. And boss frequency completely encapsulates that. I was really interested in the difference in mindset and identity required to kind of reach that boss frequency. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to talk about it sort of globally first here. So when we're thinking about the identity shift from practitioner to CEO, when we're thinking through the lens of practitioner, we're thinking I do the work, right? And the CEO identity is more I design the work. So CEOs are building containers, they're building systems, right? They're building pathways that are actually delivering that same transformation, but without requiring constant presence. Another key difference is practitioners often tie their worth to effort. So they're tying worth and effort to what they're charging, right? To their costs of their offers and their services. So they're really looking at time and money. Time is money. How much is this? Well, how much time am I spending with them? Or if we're looking at pricing a package or a program, well, if this is how many sessions and this is my hourly rate, right? Whereas a CEO understands value is created through clarity, so how well that offer is being communicated, by how it's being positioned, and by the outcomes that that offer is providing. Okay, so really big difference there. And another one is also related to the decision making aspect of it. So when you shift from practitioner to CEO, like when you make that mindset shift, you are no longer making decisions from an emotional space, but instead you're making them from a strategic space. And not to confuse strategic with like, super masculine, overly rigid, but it's still intuitive. Strategic gets to still be intuitive. But instead, again, of making decisions from how much money or how many sessions you need to sell, or just trying to get anything out there, or have like a million things going on, instead, you're really making decisions that are guided on your big vision as well as your capacity. And this is capacity is really interesting because once you shift into this role of CEO, it's really a game of expanding your capacity, how much you can really hold, and not how much you can hold from again, a time perspective, like how much can you get done in a short period of time, but how much can you really amplify the work that you are doing. It's also about making more data informed decisions. So I'm a big proponent of metrics, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, right? Right, data, but also energetic sustainability. And what I mean by that, and I know we talk a little bit about self care in this conversation too, but we don't burn ourselves out, right? We're building things in a way that we can actually sustain because we're taking many things into account. So we're no longer operating from urgency or from guilt. There's definitely oftentimes a lot of mindset baggage that has to kind of peel back some layers of the onion, before we can step into some of these roles. And on that same note, you're no longer looking at how do I help everyone? And instead, you start asking what creates the biggest ripple and you focus on that, right? And that's where scaling and leadership really begin.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think female founders in particular, you can really focus on your area of excellence, your creativity, and delegate the more kind of mundane techie tasks to technology, especially now with AI. So, just kind of leading into the operational side as we are, you mentioned the biggest bottleneck in our previous discussion for you right now is time and offloading the day to day. So, for many holistic founders, that their genius is in the high touch, personalized service, the healing, the deep coaching. But scaling forces them into being sometimes a full time admin person, a content creator, and scheduler. So, what would you say are the biggest operational roadblocks?
Yeah, such a great question because honestly, I think this is where so many people do get held back because they're focusing so much on doing the $25 an hour tasks, right? Not the $250 an hour or more, right? Body of work that you're actually doing. So, one of the biggest ones I would say is onboarding, like manually onboarding clients. So, you have a new client, you just purchase this package or program or whatever. Maybe it's their first time coming in for a one-on-one session and you go through your email and like what was the last new client I emailed and copy and paste that and edit this and where's the link to my form and right like all of these things. So like that is a big one. A repetitive admin task like you mentioned, like booking, reminders,
Yeah.
invoicing. Like when I see people still taking Venmo and everything for sessions, I'm like, please, please. I know you have to pay a little fee, but it's truly, truly worth the automation. Also, being really scattered with tools or not having enough tools. That's a really big one. I'm trying to do things again more manually, like following up, manual follow up, taking notes. No,
Yeah.
we don't need to do that anymore, right? And then for sure, like recreating the wheel for every client. So not setting up systems, right? I like to try to teach my clients like, you have when you're working one on one as a practitioner, because again, more seasoned people, especially who've been doing this work for a long time, you have a process that you bring people through, whether or not you notice it and recognize it. So actually giving yourself some of that time and energy too to like, what is the process I'm bringing people through? Something that is repeatable. That's going to save a lot of energy. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I completely agree. And it's basically, if you think about if you went on holiday for a couple of weeks, could your business keep running without you? That's really the top question I ask founders. And often the answer is no. They've started a business, but it feels like a job.
with no PTO, no benefits, you're paying all of that stuff. It's so, so true. There are a couple of powerful conversations I've had over the years that have made a really big impact on me. And I'm going to share advice that really made a difference for me. I was reading comments on some Facebook group. I think it was mompreneurs or something. And somebody mentioned everybody who makes six figures, what's the one advice you would have? And I'm reading through the comments like, tell
Yeah.
me, what's the secret? And one of the big themes that I saw come up through that was focusing on one thing, focusing on one big thing and not all of the things. And in that moment, I was like, whoa, yeah,
Mm,
that's powerful right there because I am the idea person. I have no shortage of ideas and offers I would love to launch and funnels I would love to build and audiences I would love to reach, right? And I realized in that moment that I was spending way too much time in all of these different places, like trying to chase many different avenues. And it is at that point that I realized and recognized the power of a system and repeating that system and repeating it until I've perfected it. Right. And that's really where you can start to build some momentum. My number one leading question I ask myself is how can I continue to build this so that I can step away from it? And again, this is where systems really come into practice here.
yeah, it's almost like you're planning an exit strategy years down the line. How do we get there? What's the arc? What are the processes that we need to put in? Underneath that, I call it the wellness business paradox, where we're talking about the core values of holistic well-being, self-care to our patients and our clients, but actually we're running a business that's burning us out. How can we build that into our business strategy to avoid that burnout, even while we're aggressively pursuing growth goals?
Yes, this is such an important question. And it's kind of funny because if we go back to like where we started the conversation, sharing about worksite wellness, which was where I started in corporate, the whole idea was again, the healthier and happier the employees, the better the business performs. And when we are solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, right, that is essential. Like we, and our energy is our biggest asset,
Mm.
110%. So, wellness CEOs can treat self care like a reward, and it actually needs to be treated more as an infrastructure. So, a life first business model, that's how I like to think of it. It's building life. So, it's life first, your values, your lifestyle, and building your business around that. Not that you aren't going to put in some hours trying to get that up and going, right? That's going to happen, but it's not staying there and living there and staying in the mindset of an employee versus the CEO. So when you're building a life first business model, it allows you to actually grow faster because when your plan is aligned with real human capacity, then your decision making becomes faster, you're more creative, and you don't get held back by cycles of burnout because that's what happens. You start burning out, you're not taking care of yourself, you're prioritizing sending emails or pretending like you're doing social media research but you're just in a scroll hole, right? Whatever those things are, then you're off track and your channel is clouded, and you're not tapped into your purpose and what you're here to do. You're all over the place, right? So we want clean energy. We want clear energy. We want grounded energy. And that happens in your routines, in the habits that you're building and creating for yourself. So I personally, especially as a woman, love to look at building systems around cycles, around season and energetically pacing, right? Rather than same thing every day, same thing that we're doing all the time. Giving yourself permission to live in the cycles that our world naturally operates in and we as human beings naturally operate in. And a really big key here is to look at your calendar. Your calendar says it all. If there's no space, that's the problem. There's no scalability there if you have no space. And this was really big for me too, because I definitely noticed I was never happier than the days that I had a clear schedule, that I had
Oh,
cancellations, that I
yeah.
had, you know what I mean? I was like, "Oh, yes, freedom. I can plan and do this and do that or whatever," right? And that was like a real big eye opener. I'm like, I actually don't want a lot of clients. I don't want a lot of clients at all, right? I want to make an impact. I want to make
Yeah.
ripples of change, but I don't want that to busy up my schedule.
Yeah, and it can just start with one day a week, really. You can work on your business on a Friday, and then you just have your clients on a Monday to Thursday and just build it from there, really.
Yeah.
But that first step is so difficult for founders.
Yes, 100%, 100%. And I think the last piece here is recognizing that it's not balance, right? I remember somebody telling me once, like, balance, like work life balance, that's like an illusion. There's no balance, it's balancing, right? We're always balancing these things. And it's really about coherence. So, strategy, nervous system, your values, your revenue goals. We want all of these things in coherence and working in the same direction.
Absolutely. So let's move on to branding because I know you've been through some evolutions. You've talked before about the entrepreneurial journey being a journey of healing itself. And you also mentioned the power of branding during that transition. So, what are the critical elements of messaging and content that holistic founders have got to nail down to clearly communicate what they do?
Yes. What a great question. So, I think the first thing is to recognize what branding is and what branding isn't, right? Because I think typically when we think about branding, we think about logos and colors and fonts and headshots, right? And all of these things. But I want to encourage you to think about branding more as energetic clarity. All right. So your audience should really feel who you are and who you're here for, right? So think of your brand also as a vibe. Think of it as a culture. How do you want people to feel, right? When they're in your energy, when they're reading your messaging, where they see your imagery. And your messaging evolves also when we get out of that role again, when we really move into a branded messaging. And it's not just about what you do, because I hear a lot of practitioners and healers, oh, I'm a Reiki master and a nurse and a this and a this, and listing all of the things that you do. Your brand is about the changes that happen because you exist, right? Because of your presence, because of what you do. So, branding is going to also look at positioning. So, who are you leading now? And you want to make sure your brand is positioned to speak to the person that you're calling in, not who you used to serve. So, I mentioned this is a big thing that I mean, there are never any mistakes. Everything happens for a reason. To say I wish I rebranded sooner, I wasn't ready, right? I mean, everything happens when
Yeah.
it's meant to. So you really have to be ready for that evolution. But positioning your brand so that you're not speaking to has that frequency of what you used to do, which is where I
Mm.
was, right? So for me, it was a big pivot to boss frequency, which really has that energetic tone, but it's also about being a boss, like being the boss. And that's really, to me, like the essence of it. And then language is going to be another key piece when we look at your branding. So again, we want it to be CEO level, not practitioner level. So the CEO level, again, we really understand the transformation that we're providing. We also really understand the fact that we have frameworks that we're using. It's not just willy-nilly here and there, right? It's a little bit more professional. We understand and it reflects the bigger vision of the work that we're doing, not just one offer or just one type of ideal client. And it also has a direction. So your branding and your content, we really want going in the direction of signaling you as a leader, right? And not, again, necessarily just filling slots with things. The last piece I will say that's really, really important with branding is your offer ecosystem. And I talk about offer ecosystems a lot in my world because your offers really are the heartbeat of your business, right? They are how they're the vehicle that you're delivering the transformation. They are the end goal that you're trying to connect with people through to, right, to come into your world. It's how you support them and also how your business supports you through your offers. So having a clear path with your offers, not scattered services all over the place. Like, oh, you could do this if you're here, you could do this if you're there, right? Instead, understanding how all of your offers and everything that you do works with each other and together for, again, coherence, for simplicity, and your brand should really reflect this. Yeah.
So this has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Alyssa. I know that our list has been so much that they can unpack. I think it points to a roadmap, especially the systems building to shift from that practitioner to the CEO and really scale. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, one thing that I wanted to point everybody in the direction to too, because again, like we chatted about a little bit before, there's oftentimes like that transition from, okay, how do I go from serving people one-on-one to serving somebody in a bigger capacity? So I actually created something called the magnetic offer cheat sheet that I'll give you the link so you can put in the notes that listeners can grab. And that is really designed to, in 30 minutes or less. So I kept it very succinct. I put all of my process together in it, like what are the main things that we need to know, and use a little bit of AI in there to help with brainstorming. And that's really going to help you take the big transformation you're here to provide for people and turn it into an offer that you can then make scalable.
That's brilliant. And where can people find you if they want to know more about what you do?
Yeah, so bossfrequency.com is my website. So you can connect with me there, view my offers and different ways to work with me, as well as grab the magnetic offer cheat sheet and a couple other things. And then Instagram, I would say, is probably where I show up the most. And that is bossfrequency.co. So you can also connect with me on there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alyssa.
Thank you.